Hi, everyone. I'm going to try to shrink a 1 hour keynote speech into 15 minutes today, but it's going to be fun. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Aleksandra, mostly referred to as Art, as you can see why. And I'm going to share a presentation about what brought me into Web3, sort of my journey, and hopefully it will inspire some people that are interested in working in this space and get some more ideas of where you can get involved. Just a quick show of hands. How many people recognize the background photo? A JPEG? Okay, it's a piece of generative art by William Apan. As you can see, I'm a big fan. So my journey started early on. I had some form of a nominative determinism. So being born with a surname Art, my parents early on would always take me to galleries, and my dad would focus on my sort of like art training, but I didn't really ended up being that good of an artist. So I figured out my passion lies in supporting the arts. So in 2015, I graduated from Sotheby's to do a master's in art business. And after having some experience working in the traditional art world, I was quickly disillusioned with the industry and seeing how innovation doesn't necessarily thrive in the way galleries and auction houses worked. So I received an opportunity to join .art, the top-level domain. Does anyone here have a website finishing .art? Can you raise your hand if you do? Oh, thank you. So we basically were tasked with a mission to launch the domain name, and the founder was really interested in supporting the industry and making a stance towards taking the traditional art world and bringing it online. So some of these initiatives that we worked on, for example, Ars Electronica, CADAF, 7 on 7, Lumen Prize, were all part of the early ecosystem trying to further the conversation about how can arts be online, live online, and how can we support artists working with digital technologies. So I produced a series of videos interviewing people around the world about their journey, why sort of they adopted the .art domain, and why being online matters. And I think things really escalated when COVID hit. So we worked on the first iteration of Ars Electronica's online exhibition, and then also CADAF was sort of like the first online art fair. I don't know if anyone participated in that, but you were given an opportunity to be as an exhibiting artist or a gallery, and visitors could come in the bottom left shared space and click on different circles and immerse themselves in the bottom right spaces that were curated by galleries. I mean, this was all very primitive technology because most of the people never really had to be online. They would always go to exhibitions. And then the emergence of some sort of like virtual spaces was born. And it was about 2020 when I launched Electric Artefacts. So we wanted to create an online space that would sort of put digital arts into a curated gallery online. And we created our first AR exhibition. We went to the site of Freeze, which was at the time closed because of COVID, and we just made our own little show using that functionality. 2021, Ars Electronica improved from the 2D to 3D virtual world. So there's Fabian Rashid's sculpture, and we brought together about 200 artists through an open call and managed to curate quite a stunning exhibition in a concrete house.art space. Moving on from that, in March, it should say 2021 because Hicket Nung didn't launch until last year, but I was quickly finishing my slides earlier today. Electric Artefacts was sort of like facing this moment of time where NFTs were becoming big, but not all the artists wanted to work with Ethereum-based platforms, and there weren't many alternatives. And that's when really Tezos came about. So we were hosting a generative art show just the same month that Hicket Nung launched. And one of our artists, Mike Taika, who's known for his AI series, I think the first speaker must know about him as well. He's like, well, why don't we try Tezos? Why don't we launch on Tezos? And that's when we did our first sort of like drop. It became quite popular. It was covered by a lot of news. And it was the first time I think I saw the power of how an artist who was so known, he exhibited around the world, barely sold any prints of his work, and for the first time he sold out a whole collection. And that's when I was like, okay, there's definitely something here. So I started learning about the space. I looked at the early days of crypto art. We had rare Pepe's mentioned earlier, sort of like fake rares, so the Pepe the Frog iterations, the CryptoPunks, Xcopy. I mean, you probably can recognize some of these. I looked at different categories of what NFTs are because the news were generalizing them, but there's so many different types. So you have collectibles, you have art, you have games, you have utilities, cyber vaults, you name it. And sort of like doing that research, we realized that there needs to be education. So first it started through Clubhouse. Clubhouse was a really popular platform early on to onboard people into the space. So we talked about sort of on-chain, the custody, power of women in digital arts. We started a series called Twitter Views, where we would interview artists on Twitter and sort of ask questions as a thread. So all of these were different methods to find knowledge, but also bring people together and give knowledge back. We were lucky to receive funds from Ukrainian cultural funds and the British Council in 2021, and we launched the Digital Arts Observatory .art together with a Ukrainian-based startup called vArt. Its final outcome was an exhibition and also a white paper on digital collaborations, because we wanted to empower others to see how you can learn more about collaborating online. So everything you can find in daoobservatory.arts if you want to refer later. And then 2021 hit, and it was just a crazy boom. And I think this quote that Cointelegraph kindly memorized and used my profile picture to quote me defines what it was all about. There was too much noise, there were too many PFP projects, and everything felt overwhelming. So what we do is we go back to building. I got lucky to work as a consultant on some really creative projects. So one of them was sending NFTs to the moon. So I was hired by a British robotics company to advise them on the format of what artist Sasha Jeffrey's NFT might look like. So we worked with a digital artist to develop a concept which revolved around having different phases of the moon being generative works that communicate the positioning of the moon to the final NFT. Then the next project was, while I was in Dubai presenting this at the US Expo, the war in Ukraine started, and my family is from Ukraine. My parents were in Ukraine at the time. So in 3 days, I was lucky enough to connect with a team of founders. So the left column, Andrew Wang, Giovanni Gussi, Senior Crypto, and Satwik. Together, we quickly connected, and in the course of 3 days, dropped a collection that raised, by now, up to 2 million for Ukraine. So that was a really good case study of how NFTs can be used for a good cause. And I hope I'm not like rushing you guys completely through it, but something where after all of these different drops and collaborations and advising, my head was just blowing up, and I took some time off and I just worked on projects that I personally enjoyed. And I think at that time, for the first time in probably 7 years of doing this digital art marathon, I realized that at the end of the day, you're gonna get the furthest doing what you enjoy most, but it is definitely worth trying as many things as possible. That's why I was just throwing myself to every single project early on. I was writing articles for free just to get in touch with the founders of different companies, because that was the best way to learn, by inviting people to speak on your spaces, by doing interviews. And I know many of you are already doing it, and that's great. But for those of you that don't know where to start by helping others. And so this is the fun part. I don't usually tell, and I hope my boss is not going to kill me, but on the 1st of April, I posted an April Fool's joke about being hired for one known corporate company, and people that knew me knew it's a joke, but it started getting slowly viral because people started writing to me and congratulating me. And one of those people congratulating me was my current boss at Join. So long story short, he found out I'm not being hired, but the conversation continued, and here I am 6 months later working with them. And the reason I picked Join was because it was sort of like a sublimation of all the different experiences I had. So what we do is, my job is running partnerships, and I work with different projects, and we're looking at how can they engage their community in a meaningful way. And I think the previous talk about derivatives and the power of IP is actually at the heart of what we do. So we ran like a X-Copy remix contest, but then we also partnered with different companies to do, and different projects to do many different things in a way they can take value and give it back to the community, and the community is bringing value back to them. So there is a meaningful exchange. So we powered about up to 10 ETH of rewards. About 250 artists were exhibited across about 8 different cities. And what happens is partners come to us And they're like, we want to engage our community, but we don't know how. And then together we brainstorm, how can we make this happen? And what we noticed is the most popular thing is remix contests, open calls, commissions, and giveaways. Except now we're facing a little problem. All we see on Twitter is people posting like, share, retweets, and reply your art. And I think if we want to think about the future and sort of like the summary of this slide is we're moving towards a place where we can focus on decentralized curation. And what decentralized curation means, and sort of like the tools we're also exploring now, is it's transparency. So when someone applies for your call, and this is what actually these Twitter threads do, there's transparency. You see who applied. If someone was selected, you know who was selected. But in addition to that, we're working towards having actual tools where you can manage the submissions, where you can export them, where you can utilize them. And the third part is the provenance of an artwork. So in the traditional art world, provenance plays a massive role, and we thought we solved it because every transaction is on blockchain. But actually, you're only talking about the financial transactions. You're not talking about the series of exhibitions an artwork did, who wrote about this piece. All of that information is being lost on Twitter. And I think it is important to build tools and to build an ecosystem where we can gather that data together to add more value to the work. Because for someone that wants to collect an NFT, yeah, maybe it's pretty, but maybe I want to make a more educated decision. Maybe I want to know more about the piece or the story or the artist. So working towards that right now, I sort of went really fast through my slides, so please feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to share them or share more about what I do. And then thanks a lot.